Hey everyone, it's Ivan, kitbadger.com, out here for another review. Today, talking knives, this guy right here, which is the Kwaiback Mk6 by Jake Hoback Knives. We'll go ahead and start with the name, Kwaiback. What does it mean? Well, in feudal Japan, samurai had their long blade, katana, intermediate sword, starts with a W, can't pronounce it. And then still probably cannot pronounce the name of their knife, which I want to say is Kwaiken, something along those lines. And so with that in mind, it's a merging of that name for knife, samurai's knife, and Jake Hoback, his last name, hence Kwaiback. And this one being the Mk6 because there's been a number of iterations with little improvements along the way, and here we are at Mk6. I'll get into some of the details on this Kwaiback Mk6 in a minute, but I'll go ahead and open with, I'm not like a huge knife guy. Like, yeah, I like knives, and when knives are purpose-built, I'll look at them and be like, okay, cool, like I can divine the purpose from that. And once you get outside of like really specific like purpose-built knives, which are largely just tools, then you get into some pretty cool area where you just get to have fun. Because, like, yeah, like knives are cool, and if they don't need to do something super specific beyond all the things a knife should do, like cut, then you get to do some really neat things with just design, aesthetic, and yeah, craftsmanship, all of that stuff. So I definitely do appreciate it from that standpoint, while yeah, largely not being like a knife guy and like geeking out on it. Just like watches, like I can appreciate nice watches for what they are and all that stuff, and then I can also just have a sweet watch that can tell time and do some other stuff, because cool, like I like watches. I just don't go down the rabbit hole with either of these things, while I still can appreciate them. So, go over some of the features of this guy. The blade on this knife is made out of M390 blade steel with a black DLC finish, and the thickness is 0.1875 inches. Right here we have the Jade G10, and on the other side we have titanium. This right here being, again, black DLC finish with a overall length of about 9 inches. The blade length is 3.75 and closed length is 5.3 inches. And how it carries is basically tip up. So you have your pocket clip, goes in, again, tip up. So you draw it out of your pocket, basically, yeah, produce the blade. And weight on it is 5.4 ounces. There's a lot of really cool stuff going on with this knife on a number of different fronts. One, just design aesthetic, whether it's like blade geometry or like handle design, even little things like down here, you can basically attach a lanyard if you want. Like, I'm not going to, but I appreciate that, and it's actually really well done. And then cool little things too, where, for example, like on this titanium piece, if you look back underneath, there's a bunch of parts that have been hollowed out to basically shave weight. And even with that, like, it's substantial. Now, granted, most of it is probably a beefy, thick blade, but yeah, there's absolutely heft to it still. But just cool little things like that. And, or, for example, basically the stainless steel reinforced part, which essentially makes up your lock. So yeah, super solid. So rather than titanium in there, you actually have stainless steel. And I actually really appreciate Jake's approach to kind of how this thing turned into the Mk6 in getting feedback. I think it's cool how Jake will take basically feedback from his customers and work it into the designs. By way of example, some of his customers were like, hey, really want to see like ceramic pivot bearings in there. And he's like, okay, cool. Like, now they're in there. or just little kind of nuanced like engineering pieces, like essentially pieces that prevent over travel of the blade, things along those lines. And yeah, no, I think it's pretty cool. I will say, and keep in mind with this Mark 6 from the Mark 5, if you're a knife nerd, like, you can go over to the website and you can read about all the little nuanced things that honestly some of it's just lost on me, but you will probably appreciate. As far as me and this knife, like, yeah, I appreciate it from those different aspects I mentioned, whether it's engineering or honestly just like aesthetic side. But how I've actually used this, I have cut things with this. Fortunately, not myself, but it's a knife. Like, yeah, it cuts. I mean, I've opened packages with it, like mundane stuff. I've also brought it out in the backcountry tasks, whether it's just whittling a stick so I can go roast some sausages over a fire, or for that matter, even just using the blade on a ferro rod, because there is not like a 90-degree spine on the back of it, which is fine. Again, not design intention of this knife to necessarily be used with a ferro rod, but you can absolutely do it. You just use the blade. I've also tested some body armor with this. Ended up punching this thing through some soft armor. Would not want to be wearing that when someone's, trying to stab you with this thing. And I've also, was it me or one of my boys? Can't even remember now. It's probably both of us because I'm sure I helped them, but definitely skinned and gutted out a deer with this as well.
Am I cutting around the sternum?
Nope, we're cutting straight up the sternum. Okay? You can use the bucket. You do you.
Okay.
Whatever leg or whatever hand you need to use. Okay, you need to go deeper because you're not cutting.
See how Dad's putting tension on the skin, Ira?
Ah, I see now. Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
Get more pressure, buddy. So, who do I think this would be good for? Honestly, someone that just appreciates cool knives. Because if you're just looking for something to cut, like, there's a lot of things that you can get will cut. You can just go get like a box cutter from Home Depot or something like that. Or any kind of knife from a truck stop as well. They will all cut. This is like, it borders on a work of art. Like, it's a really cool knife. And whether we like to appreciate it or not, knives, again, once you kind of step away from very purpose-driven tools with respect to knives, like, for example, if you need a fillet knife, like, it's a fillet knife. This is not that. Like, you need a fillet knife. When it comes to like, hey, I need to have a knife because I want to have a knife because I'm a man. If we're being real, it kind of turns into man jewelry at a certain point, which is totally fine. And again, there's no gatekeeper either. You're like, hey man, that thing's really cool. I want one. Like, cool, get one. Like, as you should. Like, I think these are really cool knives. Are they like $30 Amazon knives? They're absolutely not. Price-wise, you're looking at, I want to say around $500 for the Kwaiback Mk6. And yeah, it's a $500 knife. You're like, well, I could build that. Cool, man. Maybe you could. But here's the thing. Price tag's $500, a little over $500. Because all the engineering, employees, like on and on, to include at the end of the day, like taking care of his wife and kids. Like, that's what you're paying for. And in exchange, you're getting a pretty cool knife if this is something you're into. If it's not, and you just need something to open boxes, check out some other reviews I've done. Really inexpensive knives that work really well. Like, they cut things. So this yeah, it's cool. And it's one of those where it's probably more of a want than a need. But if it's something you want and it's in your budget, like, yeah, go for it. I will say, if there's anything I do not care for about this, totally honest, man, I really thought these were glow in the dark, and I wish they were glow in the dark. It'd be 10 times cooler. But overall, on a number of different levels, like, I definitely appreciate this. And if you're a knife nerd, like, go read up on the Mark 6, because there's, like I said, a bunch of cool little stuff that frankly goes over my head. But yeah, overall, pretty sweet knife. There'll be links down below if you're interested. And last but not least, if you appreciate my content and want to support it, greatly appreciate it. Whether it's liking and sharing videos or going over to kitbadger.com, picking up stickers, patches, KBAT target pads, things like that, or supporting me directly through Patreon. All that stuff helps me go out and create more content for you. But as always, thanks for joining us at kitbadger.com. Look forward to seeing you next time.